Sadly, we lost Brian Stelter earlier this year in one of the rounds of layoffs at CNN, and it remains unclear if he's ever going to return to television again. And so, in honor of his memory and all the joy that he has brought us over the years, I present to you this tribute I put together, the best of Brian Stelter.
Look, who knows? I think that's an example of a broader question for Twitter, which is if you get invited to something where there are no rules, where there is total freedom for everybody, do you actually want to go to that party? Or are you going to decide to stay home? We're still processing what it meant to the country and to our lives. So, Hunter, is there a disconnect between the people who were there that day in D.C. and the people who were not? You know, someone like me who only watched it on TV, will I ever really get it?
Joining me now is CNN chief media correspondent, host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter. Brian, what more do you have?
As you said, Kate, Zucker's been a larger-than-life figure at this news organization for nearly a decade, a pioneering figure, and now his resignation is stunning this newsroom and the news industry. Jeff Zucker's departure was shocking to the staff at CNN. This place is not perfect. It will never be perfect. We will always have flaws. We will always screw up. We'll always have to run corrections. We'll always have to keep working to make it better and better and better every single day. That's the goal. But the people who say we're lacking in journalism, that we've become an all-talk channel, that we've run off and we're all opinions all the time, that Jeff Zucker led us astray, those people aren't watching CNN. They're not watching CNN. They're watching complaints about CNN on other channels that don't know what they're talking about. Do some of the anchors say provocative things? Yes. Do some of those clips get played over and over again on other channels and mislead people about what CNN actually is? Yes.
Your reaction now to this appeal from the committee to get Hannity to cooperate?
Well, I think the big question that a lot of people are going to want to know, including Sean Hannity's viewers, is what is Sean Hannity hiding? What does Hannity know that he's been hiding from his audience? Because he has an audience of millions of people who rely on him, who trust him, who believe him, even though he's given them many reasons to disbelieve. And so what has he been hiding from them for the past year? So I think it really comes down to that key question. What's he hiding? What has he known over the past year that he hasn't told his viewers or told the public? Is he in on it in some way? As we know, we're learning about this vast conspiracy. Was he in on it in some fashion? Kat, you wrote on Twitter about Spotify. You went viral for a comment about it yesterday. Tell us your point of view first about this Spotify mess, because it's really dominated the week.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about the backlash against Spotify vis-a-vis Joe Rogan is that people are fundamentally angry about not being able to stop his audience from wanting news that is bad for them, wanting something that's bad for them. So, we're all haunted by the specter of this guy who's listening to Joe Rogan and internalizing this bad information and making bad choices as a result. But Rogan is like a weed that sprang up outside the mainstream media ecosystem, and he thrived there, and he has this huge audience. And that's what's really scary, that Spotify could kick him off tomorrow, and it wouldn't make a dent. It wouldn't make a dent in his audience. People would still listen to him. And crucially, they still wouldn't trust more mainstream media sources. And I think that's what's really, really frightening to people.
Here's a big, overly broad question for you, okay? Is the media at this point out of touch with the public about COVID?
I think it's hard to argue that, the media is a large group of people, but a lot of the media does seem, when I look at it and then travel the country, to be very out of touch with people. I mean, if you travel the country, people are not really living in the same bubble that it seems that most of the media is messaging toward. And so I think this is an issue, because if people are tuning out, what's going on in cable news, if we're not messaging toward the general population, then they're just ignoring everything and living their lives, and we're not really getting the information that they need to them.
I want to show all kinds of opinions.
Which sounds great, but not all opinions are created equal. You think about major newsrooms like CNN that have health departments and desks and operations that work hard on verified information on COVID-19. And then you have talk show stars like Joe Rogan who just wing it, who make it up as they go along. And because figures like Rogan are trusted by people that don't trust real newsrooms, we have a problem that's much bigger than Spotify, much bigger than any single platform, Kate. But that's what's at the heart of this right now.
Yeah, but you're right. It is getting at something bigger that isn't going to be solved in one Joe Rogan video or one statement from Spotify. That's for sure.
Donald Trump Jr. attacked me in his speech at CPAC. Something about me looking like a gender-neutral potato head. And then the tweets started rolling in on my computer, people telling me about Donald Jr. insulting me, and I thought of some really cutting responses, some really clever ways to reply, some way to go viral, but then I stopped. I didn't post anything. It was just another distraction. He wanted me to respond. This was just more BS fuel for the culture war, and it does not matter. There is too much real news going on. There's no time for potato heads. 4 little words that are hurting America's pandemic response. What are they? Here, let Sean Hannity tell you. He loves these words.
Do your own research. Please do your own research. Do your own research. Do your own research. There's a ton of it right on, at the tip of your fingers on your own phone.
That phrase, do your own research, is popping up a lot in conversations about coronavirus and about COVID vaccines. Nicki Minaj used similar wording in that tweet this week, saying she was doing research. But this go-it-alone approach, doing your own research, it seems so innocent, but it can have serious consequences. Jen, thanks for coming on Reliable Sources.
My pleasure.
Busy summer ahead, infrastructure, election reform. What does the press get wrong when covering Biden's agenda? When you watch the news, when you read the news, what do you think we get wrong?
I'll have to just circle back with you. We can circle back with him. I'm happy to circle back with you. I can circle back. I will have to circle back on that one. That's an excellent question. Oh, such an important question. We will circle back with you, and we'll circle back with you.
For journalists who watch what you do, what's your advice for them about trying to stay as close to the truth in this world of lies?
Well, I think what I try to do is stay grounded to the facts, and what I mean by that, the details. And
I'll circle back if there's more I can share with you.
The major networks did not carry Donald Trump's Saturday night rally. Even Fox News ignored it. But Fox is serving the ex-president's agenda in lots of other ways. Reporters likened the rally to a revenge tour, and Fox sure knows revenge. To understand why so many Republicans have abandoned democracy, to see why so many believe the big lie, to get why so many are trying to rewrite voting rules, you have to hear the poisonous propaganda that the GOP's activist base is listening to. So, that's what I did this week. I watched every episode of Sean Hannity's show, and I color-coded it. As you can see right here, I focused on his language, the insults, the phrases that he repeats every night. Nasty little words like these.
Socialist, stalker, weak, failure, shameless, psychotic indoctrination, hellholes.
And that's just the beginning. Look, the beginning of the Biden years is not the end of Trump's war on truth. The fractures, the fault lines of the Trump era are very much still with us. I'm talking about the mainstreaming of conspiracy thinking, the demonizing of others, the gaslighting that's going on. Trump himself can't tweet anymore, so he's not quite as visible, and lots of folks don't want to hear about him at all anymore. And his apologists say everyone should just move on and forget about his years of misconduct. But it's not over. It's not in the past. Besides, it's not really about him anymore. It's about his acolytes now. The Trump-era war on truth is being waged every day by his lieutenants. Reducing a liar's reach is not the same as censoring freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is different than freedom of reach. And algorithmic reach is part of the problem. There is a gathering storm. Most of us can feel it in the air, but is it being reflected on the air? What happened on January 6th was not a passing storm in American politics. The peril remains. Donald Trump's attempt at a coup was not the end of the story. He is still trying to steal the election, and by claiming it should be decertified, and he's already clearly planning to run again. He held a rally last night. So what does that tell us about 2024? It tells us that there is a gathering storm. The only NBC program to mention the Trump coup this week was Late Night with Seth Meyers. And the Seth Grady covered it well, but the newscasts did not cover it. Look, I get that there's a lot going on, but a slide towards autocracy should merit some airtime. Where are Tucker and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham? Where's Ainsley Earhart and Steve Doocy and Brian Kilmeade? Where are the biggest stars on Fox getting vaccinated? Everybody else is doing it, right, Matt? I mean, all across television, all these anchors are rolling up their sleeves. Why do you think you haven't seen the biggest stars on Fox News get vaccinated or show us their vaccine selfies? This new report about YouTube, it's up on the TTP website. It's more evidence, Oliver, of something that's been emerging for years, right? But not only are the echo chambers really, really insidious, they're also louder, more on one side than the other.
Right, and I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone, including the folks at YouTube, right, that their recommendation algorithm is really a radicalization machine. And the thing is, what are they going to do about this problem?
So many millions are being seduced and being deceived by an alternative reality. Trump is not really the leader of this anymore. Tucker Carlson is. From downplaying the pro-Trump riot of January 6th to mainstreaming a white supremacist conspiracy theory. And I know, Tucker's been here before. Remember that time he said white was a hoax? But his comments this week, on Thursday, were another new low, as he identified the so-called white replacement theory by name. This is something that's fringe, often on racist websites, but he played it out for his viewers to hear. And it's been played a lot. I know the Fox segment has been played repeatedly, so I'm not going to air it here. But Tucker knew exactly what he was doing. Look at the quote. He even predicted that people would be disturbed by his argument, which made him all the more delighted to make the argument anyway. Sean Hannity and I used to have a really friendly relationship. He gave me great advice when I graduated college. He gave me great advice when I joined CNN, went into television, and honestly, like a lot of relationships in the Trump years, our relationship frayed in the Trump era, in the Trump years, and then it's disappointing to me.
Your response, and explain to us how you approach your interviews, how you try to be fair.
Sometimes I think I'm just a content machine for Fox News because they need something to complain about. Social distancing has transformed the news, in some ways, forever.
It's kind of crazy.
From Dr. Sanjay Gupta to lawmakers to celebrities. Everyone is adjusted to at-home studios. From local to international news, reporters trade tips about the best ring lights, tripods, and mics. I invested in blackout shades and soundproofing, though it didn't really work. There's only so much you can control. Home live shots are a source of TV drama during a stressful time. Staircases and doors leave viewers wondering, will somebody walk in? Will a kid interrupt? Will there be a surprise guest appearance? Or maybe two. And how will the guest handle it? I quickly learned to lock the door before every hit. But sometimes it is more fun not to.
David Cameron was talking about, oh, I'm really sorry, that's my son.
Hey, reporter Deborah Haynes' son just wanted a snack.
Yes, you can have 2 biscuits.
Sky News cut away, but it's better to just embrace the chaos. Embarrassing moments are humanizing moments, and the media needs more of that. Being live at home, it's relatable and revealing. Although sometimes a little too revealing.
They will scale up the program if it is successful, guys.
Very cool. We love it, Will.
Next time, he wore pants. But hey, I can relate. This was me live on CNN with just 2 minutes notice, talking with Wolf Blitzer about Trump's Twitter account being banned. Later that night, I changed rooms, switching up the backdrops. And that's when my phone blacked out.
And we lost Brian.
Let's go, Brandon. Look, ultimately, it's about news judgment. It's about lack of judgment, but I find it befuddling. All right, that's where we start. That's how I'm feeling. I'd love to know how you're feeling. This is such heavy subject matter. I just want to say on a lighter note, Mark, I love your kitchen. It's giving me great renovation ideas. I gotta find something positive to say because the news is so dire.
Well, thank you. It seems everyone these days is reporting on the news from their kitchen with all the social distancing. But I am getting fat, though, because just 6 feet from me is a bunch of food. And I just bought one of those super-sized containers of peanut butter-filled pretzels from Costco.
The one benefit of working from home. All right, thank you, everybody. Happy Sunday to all of you. There's this new social media app called Parler getting a lot of attention because conservatives are saying they're leaving Twitter and Facebook, going off to Parler because they believe Parler's a safer space for them. What we're seeing is even more of a bunker mentality in right-wing media And ultimately, that's not good for the country.
No, it's not good. It's a threat to democracy that these people are in echo chambers and they're getting fed a diet of lies, essentially.
I don't think CNN is, or any other channel right now, is anti-Trump. What we are seeing are journalists trying to stand up for truth and decency. And when President Trump gives an inspiring speech, we do say so. Even when I was growing up, I was interested in being on television. I would pretend to be a television anchor in the basement, but sometimes I still marvel that they allow me on television. Can I just put that over there? It's okay to not be okay right now. That's the main thing I want to say to everyone watching. It wasn't until this Friday night that I hit a wall. I was supposed to be finishing my nightly newsletter that I mentioned earlier, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't get it done, and that's when the tears came. I mean, yeah, there were some messages from guys trying to do that performative masculinity thing, saying men shouldn't cry or talk about crying. Yeah, he still seems to prefer these small fights with the press instead of focusing on the virus. And that anti-media propaganda video is an example. He started this briefing with that anti-media propaganda video, which is nothing short of disgraceful. The country is being misinformed. I think it's fair to say the country is being lied to about the small pilot program that they're implying is going to help the entire country, starting Sunday or Monday. I am sorry to say it will not help the entire country on Sunday or Monday.
How is this going to affect Americans?
Well, I think big picture, today was the day that tens of millions of Americans felt the impact of the virus for the first time. Whether it's your favorite NBA team being affected, or whether it's The View not having a studio audience. I think in some ways companies and corporations are leading the way now. They are ahead of the federal government. The president not reassuring the public tonight, labored in his breathing, struggling to get a coherent message out, but corporations are leading the way. And signaling that this is going to be an impact to our lives for the next month or 2 or 3 or more. I've been getting some grief from Sean Hannity this weekend, speaking of Fox, right? From Hannity for once suggesting that I thought Avenatti could be a serious candidate for president. So give me a media critique. Was that stupid on my part? What do you make of how Avenatti was covered by CNN and MSNBC? Despite Trump's claim, there is no evidence that Bloomberg is asking to stand on a box. And there's nothing wrong with standing on boxes. By the way, some of the candidates do that at debates so that the camera angles all make sense. And let me just say one more thing, which is this the state of the GOP? That we just sit there and we just make fun of other people? Is that what this is now? Hey, I'm Brian Stelter. Welcome to Reliable Sources. This hour, as the impeachment trial goes on, brand new polling from Fox News.
Right now, we've spoken about this. Right-wing supporters are leaving Twitter for Parler, switching the channel from Fox News to Newsmax. What do you think is driving the changes we're seeing in the media landscape?
Yeah, this is the giant move from 3 channels to thousands of channels, and in every interview Obama's given about his new book, he is talking about these changes in the media ecosystem that are making it harder, he says, to govern and to have a functioning democracy. I don't think anybody would want to turn back the clock 50 years and go back to a time before the internet, before mobile phones. At least most people wouldn't want to turn back the clock. But the consequence of this technology is that everybody is the member of the media, and these incendiary platforms with hyper-partisan content and lies and smears, they are able to get major traction. Obama talks about this in the interviews that are going to come out in the next few days. He is very critical of this disinformation world that now exists, but like everybody else, Pamela, he doesn't have any easy answers. He can identify the problems, then he's right about the problems, but there are no easy solutions to these problems. What we are seeing from the president is delusional weakness. Unable or unwilling to accept reality. He is spinning up delusional stories about mass voter fraud and about machines being rigged, and there is demand for it. Let me show you the ratings for Newsmax. I've never seen anything like this. In the 16 years I've been covering Fox News, I've never seen a channel pop like this. Going from, like 100,000 viewers a day on a good day, Greg Kelly's now getting 1 million viewers a night. Fox has never seen competition like this in its history. So what you have going on is this right-wing audience that's ticked off at Fox News for not being pro-Trump enough. I never thought I would see it. The photos, the White House has been releasing the videos. We have to show them because they're the only evidence that we have of the president's condition, but they are propagandistic. That's unfortunately the situation we're in. And Anna, the White House Correspondents Association is calling out the White House right now. This is the press corps, the press pool that is supposed to travel with the president at all times. They were not informed of this photo op. They were not with him when this happened. That is a grievous breach of protocol. And the association is saying, quote, "It is outrageous for the president to have left the hospital, even briefly, amid a health crisis without a protective pool present to ensure that the American people know where their president is and how he is doing. Now, more than ever, the American public deserves independent coverage of the president so they can be reliably informed about his health." That is absolutely correct. And by the way, Anna, if the president was feeling so well, why didn't he walk outside in the fresh air rather than get cooped up in that car? I mean, that's not a comfortable place for anybody to be in. As a COVID-positive patient, he could have walked out onto the lawn and waved to the public. Here is a unique way to evaluate presidents. Just look at their diets. Look at what they are consuming. I'm talking about their media diets and what those diets reveal about their leadership. He is tweeting about Newsmax and One American News more than ever before. Then he flies to Georgia and he plays a montage of clips from those Newsmax and OAN shows at his rally. A montage. It's like he wants my job. We usually make the clip reels around here. But I really shouldn't joke because there is nothing funny about this. It's getting more severe. Aaron, your view of this, when you see entire media companies essentially exist to tear down Joe Biden, is there an equivalent to that on the left, tearing down Trump?
There really isn't.
It's so disappointing to look at what we're seeing in right-wing media these days, where there's such an obsession with the deep state and these revelations about the Russia probe and the decision about Michael Flynn. When the president called into Fox and Friends the other morning, Friday morning, right before the unemployment numbers came out, he talked about the Flynn case for 20 minutes. Let me introduce you to One American News. It's a conservative cable news channel that claims to be
your source for credible, honest, unbiased reporting from around the world.
But it's actually anything but that. OAN is part traditional newsreel.
Facebook announces a major deal.
Nancy Pelosi called Joe Biden the right man for the job.
Today marks National Jelly Bean Day.
And part right-wing commentary, with the occasional baseless conspiratorial video thrown in for good measure. So beyond irresponsible content and hard-right commentary, OAN is probably best known for asking some of President Trump's favorite questions at White House press briefings.
Go ahead, OAN, in the back. OAN, please, OAN. OAN.
In 2015, OAN hitched its wagon to the Trump train.
Trump's political views on key issues have remained remarkably the same for nearly 30 years.
Chanel Rian, who is billed as their White House correspondent, she has a long history of spreading conspiracy theories.
Rian has not responded to multiple requests for comment from CNN.
Despite facing all the increasing censorship over the last few years, I'm still doing okay, and I'm confident that my book is going to do very well. So, really looking forward to that.
You understand that someday you're going to regret this, right? Someday you're going to regret this when your kids and your grandkids look back at this time and you use slurs and smears like fake news to hurt news outlets. Mark,
I should have picked a different career.
I think in 10 or 20 years, if we just sit down and talk about this, you're going to recognize how damaging this was.
Yes.
How damaging it was to use terms like fake news to attack journalists who are trying to do their jobs.
Oh, trying to do your job. You're hilarious, Brian.
Well, I appreciate you coming on to talk about it.
I'm glad to be with you. I'm having fun.
He is getting worse. We can all see it. It's happening in public. But it's still a very hard, very sensitive story to cover. When you watch a broadcast nightly newscast, how often do you hear about just how far off the road Trump is? Not often enough. So something's wrong. There are lots of theories about what it is. There are some doctors who think they know. There are others who say we shouldn't speculate. There are ethical questions about even having this conversation at all. But we can't tiptoe around it anymore. We've got to talk about this. Don't be fooled by the partisans who cherry-pick the worst mistakes of individual journalists or the craziest ideas from commentators and claim that's the entire media. It's not. You're going to hear this from the right for the next days and weeks to come. The press basically made all this up to take down President Trump. but the press is just following a trail that Trump created. He has proven time and time again that he cannot be trusted. And if the president was watching Fox and Friends this morning, he saw this banner. It says, Trump cuts U.S. aid to 3 Mexican countries. The reference, of course, was to Central American countries. The network apologized several hours later, said the banner should have never appeared. Obviously, that's the case. But I don't know what's going on over there. President Trump right now celebrating Robert Mueller's no collusion conclusion. He's celebrating by condemning the press. He's repeating a Fox News talking point. You can see it right here. It says the New York Times, the Washington Post's Pulitzer Prizes for Russia coverage should be taken away. Fake, he says. There's also been an enormous amount of speculation in the past 2.5 years about collusion, and even worse, there has been a reckoning in the past week about the media's coverage of these issues. And yet, we're still kind of in the dark. I mean, let's remember that headline right there. The Mueller report is more than 300 pages long, and so far we've only seen 101 words.
What was the trajectory of how this went wrong?
Yeah, the headline was so sensational and so disturbing. It first came out on TMZ. Not only that Smollett said he'd been attacked, but that the attackers said this is MAGA country. Well, obviously, Chicago at 2 in the morning is not MAGA country, so that didn't make sense in the first place. Lots of parts of the story didn't make sense, but the activists, actors, Hollywood celebrities, friends of Smollett, Democratic presidential candidates, they all wanted to sound like they were doing the right thing, saying the right thing, standing up for a victim. There was a rush to judgment. I think it was mostly in the celebrity press and amongst activists and among Twitter people. I think it was really careful reporting by news organizations. But it all gets lumped in together at the end of the day. It all gets lumped together into the minds of these people who now say, what went wrong here? And obviously, at the end of the day, what went wrong is that he may have made it up, and ultimately, that's his responsibility. So, grift. Grift. It is one of the top words of this political moment. Liberals, and actually a fair number of conservatives, are accusing the president and pro-Trump media celebs of being grifters, of selling stuff and exploiting people. And these critics say that this behavior was on full display at the Conservative Political Action Committee conference, CPAC, this week. So I want to unpack what this means. Here to discuss it is Bill Kristol, Director of Defending Democracy Together, New York Magazine's Washington correspondent Olivia Nuzzi, and CNN senior media reporter Oliver Darcy, who's fresh back from CPAC. Oliver, grifting, this idea of grifting. What is it? What does it mean? Why is it coming up so often these days?
Well, it's basically this idea of exploiting gullible people to sell something, to raise your brand awareness. And I think it's coming up because, well, look, Brian, CPAC has always been a representation of where the Republican Party is, where it's going, and I'm not sure it was ever this place for intellectual discourse, as some people would say, but it has in recent years become more like Trump. It's a celebration of Trump, and so you see a lot of grifters, people throwing red meat rhetoric out at crowds to raise their brand. Guys like Charlie Kirk, Diamond and Silk, Michelle Malkin. Those are the people there, and they are selling books often at CPAC. They're trying to
Every night in prime time, Democrats are dehumanized. They are attacked relentlessly by Fox News primetime hosts. It was always hard for me to imagine a Democrat primary debate taking place in those hours when figures like Nancy Pelosi and now Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are constantly demonized and attacked. So the Democrats are now making that official and saying, we'll have nothing to do with Fox in this primary season. I don't know if it's a good thing that star power and TV savvy is required for the job, but I think it is. And by the way, I think President Obama also had a lot of TV star power, and that helped him pre-Trump. But Trump is more evident of this. And looking ahead to 2020, one reason why I'm taking you seriously as a contender is because of your presence on cable news. A lot of what Fox does in prime time is resentment television, making you resent the liberals and others who are trying to hurt you. That's the message from Fox. I think all of this matters because it's about decency and standards. It's about the corrosive, ugly, nasty behavior that sometimes happens on cable news or off cable news involving some of these hosts. The H word comes to mind, hypocrisy. There's a lot of hypocrisy here in the past week from folks who are saying the media should apologize to Trump. There was a lot of reason here to be suspicious, and journalists' job are to ask those questions, to be suspicious. A lot of those folks on Fox who are attacking mainstream media right now, they're saying that this is a conspiracy theory. Journalists should be reflective. This is a great moment to be reflective about the past 2 years. Pay attention to the big lies. I know some folks are exhausted by the daily deceptions, the small lies from Trump world. But Trump and his allies are telling big lies. Right now, the most popular one is no obstruction. No obstruction at all. The attempts to obstruct are screaming off the page. So what's the role of the press in this broken environment? In part, our role is to keep collecting facts, all of the facts, so that citizens can make up their own minds. But I think it's also our role to stand up for decency and morality, especially if others won't. Journalists, after all, work with a code of ethics. We have and we try to enforce standards, and when we fall down on those standards, we try to learn from those mistakes. And journalists can help lead the way by talking about morality and ethics. Look, I know that I'm a convenient hate object for right-wing media. I recognize that, and I usually just blow it off. But I think there was something important throughout this conversation that I want to emphasize. There was certainly evidence of a willingness to collude. I think there's a lot of analysts like Jeffrey Toobin would say, yeah, there was clearly some collusion. It's a matter of how much collusion there was. There's a lot we don't know about the social media efforts and about the attempts to spread fake news by Russian bots and whether Trump may be involved. But this is the issue, right? There's two different narratives right now about what happened. It's an awards dinner, a fundraiser. In the past, presidents have always shown up, even if they were angry with the press at any given time. Here's what the Correspondents Association says. They say basically they don't mind either way. It's going to be about celebrating journalists. It's all about celebrating the First Amendment, and the show will go on. There's their statement about this weekend's dinner. But look, it's another example of what we're seeing. This administration's attack against the media. It takes many forms. One form is the president having a rally this Saturday instead of attending the dinner. And I do think it matters mostly because of what it means about these tensions continuing to escalate. A big move by Facebook, banning several accounts. And now there's new blowback from the commander-in-chief. President Trump's furious reaction to Facebook's action showcases that he is, I'm sorry to say, the InfoWars president. He is promoting the same alternative universe as InfoWars and sharing videos from repugnant characters. Now, InfoWars, of course, is that website led by rageaholics Alex Jones. None of this is journalism. These memes, these smears, this crap has no relationship to journalism. But journalists have to grapple with this misinformation muck. We saw this at the White House Social Media Summit. That wasn't. Did you hear about this a few days ago? It was a clear stunt by the president. He was ridiculing reporters while inviting internet trolls and far-right Twitter personalities, fringe radio hosts to the White House. In some ways, maybe a campaign rally for 2020. It was tempting to say we should just ignore this event and call it a stunt and move on, but something important was happening. Trump was legitimizing provocateurs and, in some cases, extremists who deliberately spread misinformation. It felt to me like he was preparing his 2020 meme corpse. You know, the folks that make those visual images that spread across Facebook and go viral. Everybody makes spelling mistakes. All right, everybody. I do, everybody does. But on Twitter, Donald Trump makes a lot more of them than most people. Just this week, he misspelled Republican and unfair. But those are hardly the worst examples. We have seen countless absurd spellings from the commander-in-chief. He has called showbiz shoebiz. There's hamburgers. There's the smocking gun. There's a lot of these. Even misspelling his wife Melania's name. It's actually not that funny. I know English teachers are horrified by the president's poor form. Lots of other people are embarrassed by it too. But I've never seen anyone do a comprehensive study of his spelling errors or look at what they mean. So that's where FactBase comes in. FactBase is this excellent website that has every single word the president says. Some other politicians as well. It looks at all of Trump tweets, even the deleted ones, for this database of typos and other screw-ups. So we gave the president the full benefit of the doubt. These researchers only counted true misspellings, homophone swaps, and incorrect multi-word phrases. So, here's what the researchers found. On average, Trump makes a spelling error at least 1 out of every 5 days. And since taking office, he's made at least 188 of them total. More than 188 spelling errors on Twitter. Here's Trump's numbers up against Obama's just to get it into perspective here, because, again, everybody makes mistakes. Trump started tweeting in 2009, Obama started tweeting in 2012. If you compare their errors since joining Twitter, Trump has made 358 of those spelling mistakes, those errors. Barack Obama, 4. The word cult has been popping up more and more. Thinking back 2 weeks ago on this program, Anthony Scaramucci talked about his claim that Trump supporters are in a cult. Just last week, Dan Rather said he thinks support for Trump is increasingly cultish. And this weekend in the Washington Post, Trump critic and Republican strategist John Weaver said the GOP is not a party anymore in the traditional sense. It is a cult. None of them are mental health experts. Stephen Hassan is. He's out with a brand new book called The Cult of Trump. He has first-hand experience escaping the Unification Church back in the 70s, and he has decided to write this book because he believes there's something seriously wrong in our politics.
If you want to say one thing to Mark Dice, what would it be?
I don't know Mark Dice.
So you don't know who Mark Dice is?
I didn't say that. I said I don't know Mark Dice personally.
If you had to say one thing to him, what would it be?
So, again, very clever stunt. I love the game. I think you're very good at the game. So I respect the player. I also respect his funny videos. I've watched a couple of them. I'm sure he'll love this one also. It's funny. It's not journalism. I don't care much about it, but it's funny. The president is constantly lying and spreading conspiracy theories every day. It's getting worse. I find myself wondering, what more should the press be doing to try to convey this extraordinary and uncomfortable situation? Should there be a bug in the corner of the screen that says, warning, the president is probably misleading you again? What are the answers here? Of course, he tells us to trust him about everything, right? He tells us all these lies, he spreads all these falsehoods, and then he tells us there's no collusion, tells us he's innocent, but he's done nothing to earn your trust and everything to squander it. If the White House can't get the small stuff right, it makes you worry about the big stuff. And honestly, I think you should be worried because the president continues to spread conspiracy theories, even about hurricanes. Now, he does this to evade responsibility, to deflect blame, and to keep his fans fired up, but we in the press corps have to keep calling it out. We can't get immune to this. In discussions amongst friends and family and debates on social media, people are questioning the president's fitness. But these conversations are happening in newsrooms and TV news studios as well. Usually after the microphones are off, or after the stories are filed, after the paper's been put to bed, people's concerns and fears and questions come out. Questions that often feel out of bounds, off limits, too hot for TV. Questions like these. Is the President of the United States a racist? Is he suffering from some kind of illness? Is he fit for office? And if he's unfit, then what? These are upsetting, polarizing questions. They're uncomfortable to ask. But we in the national news media can't pretend like our readers and viewers aren't already asking. They are asking. This is how deep the country's divide has really become. When historians look back on the Trump presidency, they'll say that this was the week that something changed. Something really shifted in the conversations about the president. Uncomfortable questions moved into the mainstream in a big way. Trump's odd behavior with Vladimir Putin is compelling so many people to ask, what does Putin have on Trump? Has Trump been compromised? All of those people, those experts, those reporters, they are looking at the fact pattern and they're seeing something strange, even something sinister. Is your Twitter feed sick? These days, harassment, hate speech, and misinformation are poisoning social media. And Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey seems to know this. He's trying to cure Twitter of these ills. But how? At a rare interview at Twitter's headquarters in San Francisco, I asked him, what is the timeline for re-examining how you show follower counts or the use of the like button?
You know, we're looking and thinking about all these things right now. We've definitely had conversations about them.
But would you say, like, by the end of the year, there's going to be those fundamental changes to Twitter?
I worry about a time frame like that because we also need to take into consideration we're a small company.
The biggest story of the weekend, well, everywhere except the pro-Trump media, is that big climate change report with dire new warnings released by the Trump administration on Friday. Most of the major networks covered the report in detail. It's been a big story on cable news, except for Fox News. Instead of engaging in climate change denialism, they just ignored the problem altogether, which I would argue is another form of denialism.
And the bottom line is that, yes, she was complicit, but she was doing all this knowing that it was going to be a payoff in the end for her. And then once she got upset with him, or he got upset with her, or whatever happened, she decides to turn on him. She's not a friend, she's a liar, and I would say she's evil.
I hope she can respond to that at some point soon, calling her evil. I'm
sure she will.
I'm sure she will. Panel, stick around. Let's take a turn for a moment, and we'll bring the panel back later in the hour. After the break, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Let me say, with regards to what's in the Woodward book, right? These claims about how his aides think he's a threat to the country, a threat to national security. Do you feel that that's new? Meaning, has Woodward uncovered anything new here? Or when you read the excerpts, were you kind of wondering, hey, what's the fuss? CNN is asking for a hearing today in D.C. District Court, today or tomorrow, sometime this week, to get a temporary order to get Acosta's press pass back right away. Then CNN will also seek what's called permanent relief so that this doesn't happen again in the future. In the past, the U.S. president's words had projected power and shaped global decisions. What the president said meant something. It meant a lot. But not now. Not anymore. What President Trump says is so frequently false or nonsensical that his words don't have the same meaning, the same power, the same impact as past presidents. It's a shame, but it's true. Trump simply cannot be trusted.
He's easy. President Trump is an easy target.
You talked about him being an unwitting Russian asset. Jonathan Tate, you went a step further in your cover story for New York Magazine this week. We could put it on screen, I think. You talked about whether President Trump has actually been a Russian asset for decades. In fact, I've asked a Twitter spokesman, does this violate Twitter's terms of service, making this kind of threat towards North Korea? So far, no immediate comment from the company. Still waiting to hear. I think they're trying to decide if this kind of tweet, referring to a nuclear button and he knows how to use and it works, whether that actually is a violation of their terms of service. The President of the United States is the country's biggest promoter of misinformation. And he's been in an awfully chatty mood lately, super talkative, holding press conferences and Q&As, interviews and chats on Air Force One. He called into Fox News one night this week and then woke up and called in the next morning. And the result is even more pollution in the air and on the air. I wish this weren't the case. I wish the fact checkers weren't working overtime on his comments. It's usually and definitely a good thing for the press to have more access to powerful people. But with Trump, the downside of that access is he's saying so much stuff that's untrue that it sows confusion and division. That's what USA Today did by running this presidential op-ed the other day, full of distortions. And that's what Fox and Friends did by putting Trump on the phone for 46 minutes and then not correcting many of the errors. So this is a list that we made. This is all the list of his appearances since Monday. Look at how many he's done. Since that made-for-TV moment to swearing in Justice Kavanaugh to a number of interviews with Fox News, etc. Q&As on the South Lawn of the White House, etc. And his press tour is continuing today with his first sit-down interview on 60 Minutes since Inauguration Day.
I disagree, but I don't want to have that fight with you.
Hey,
all right,
it's
we're
okay.
gonna have another fight with you.
Leslie, it's okay. In the meantime, I'm president and you're not.